Discover the incredible journey of rejection to transformation. 40M Malibu venue exposed. Sarah Collins stood at the edge of the glittering Pacific, watching the waves crash against the rocks with the same ferocity that churned within her. The sun set in brilliant hues, a stark contrast to the darkness that clung to her heart. Once an esteemed event planner, her life had unraveled after a betrayal that left her not just heartbroken, but also teetering on the brink of financial ruin. To the elite folks of Malibu, she was a ghost and echo of who she once was. Swept aside and swallowed by their glittering lives, she glanced at Jake, her headstrong teenage son, whose defiance often matched the amber streaks in the sunset. He had become a hard-to-reach enigma, testing the rebellion that brewed within the spirit of adolescence. Emily, her diligent daughter, stood quietly by the car, pushed aside, her ambition often overshadowed by Jake's tumultuous storms. The weight of their financial instability pressed down on Sarah like a heavy cloud, making every small victory feel like a cruel lie. And yet, in the midst of her looming despair, a chance meeting changed everything. Sarah collided with George, an elderly former event designer whose humble warmth radiated like sunlight piercing through the fog. They connected instantly, a shared understanding bloomed. He too had faced the brutal aftermath of betrayal and obscurity. Their conversation sparked a flame of creativity within Sarah that she thought had long been extinguished. The idea of reintroducing the 40M Malibu venue, once a jewel of the area, began to take shape as a way for both of them to reclaim their dignity. But as days turned into an exhilarating frenzy of brainstorming ideas and meticulous planning, Sarah felt the silent pressure gnawing away at her resolve. George's murky past resurfaced like unwanted splinters, sending anxious whispers spiraling through her mind. She was pushed to confront questions that rattled her core. Was she on the brink of another betrayal? Or worse, was she losing sight of her own integrity for the sake of ambition? Sarah found herself torn. Ambition dangled before her like a forbidden fruit, whispering promises of recovery and recognition. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With each approach of the venue's unveiling, her anxiety twisted tighter around her heart. The whispers of scandal surrounding the venue's foundation grew louder, taunting her as shadows began to creep into her budding confidence. Every time she stood in front of her bathroom mirror, the reflection staring back questioned who she had become. Was her loyalty to George worth sacrificing her integrity? Or would silence become a liability that left her shackled once more to the memories she fought so hard to escape? As the stakes climbed and the pressure thickened, Sarah felt suffocated, fighting feelings of elation and dread in equal measure. A call from a well-known investigative journalist brought it all to a head. Are you ready to risk everything for your truth? The weight of the decision thudded in her chest, and in that moment of reckoning, Sarah was not just confronted by her past. She was challenged to define her future. Would she dare to step into the light or remain a shadow in a world that thrived on secrets? The path forward flickered before her, shimmering with both hope and peril, and she had to choose which shadow to embrace. The sun dipped below the horizon, a shade darker than the thoughts swirling in Sarah's mind. With George's proposal etched in her heart, Sarah paced back and forth on the rocky shore, her feet sinking into the damp sand. The gentle lapping of the waves began to wash the uncertainty from her core, yet the weight of the upcoming decision loomed like a heavy cloak draped over her shoulders. She considered the question posed by the journalist. Risk everything for what? For the truth? What had that truth ever done for her? The corners of her mind were laden with haunting memories of betrayal and embarrassment, moments that ignited the flame of her current predicament. But hadn't she battled through so much already? Hadn't she faced the tide? Determined, Sarah recalled her early days in event planning. Back then, she operated on instinct, crafting unique experiences that brought people together in celebration. Each event served as a testament not just to her organizational talents, but to her innate ability to weave dreams into reality. Somewhere along the way she had lost that spark. Was this journey with George her chance to reignite that flame? As night claimed the sky, She imagined the glorious nights the venue once hosted, the laughter, elegance, and creativity that radiated through the air like the scents of blooming flowers. That symphony of joyous sounds had echoed through her life, fueling her creativity and ambition. Could she harness that energy once more? Jake's rebellious spirit nudged her mind. She could feel his youthful energy, restless yet vibrant, urging her to consider what she was modeling for him. Then there was Emily, quietly ambitious, standing in the shadows of her brother's chaos. Sarah's heart ached. If she took this risk, could she not only salvage her career but also show her children the strength of resilience? The importance of standing firmly in one's truth. Time blurred as the waves frolicked at her feet in harmony with her racing thoughts. Decisions made in the shadows weighed heavy against the promise of light. She needed to confront George about his checkered past. The mounting questions required answers, reassurance that their partnership did not bear the burden of deception. That conversation could either dismantle everything or rebuild their dream. Yet, fear coursed through her veins like an electrical current. This pursuit of truth could require sacrifices she wasn't prepared to face. The stakes, her integrity, her dreams, the bond with her children, all intertwined in an intricate web of risk and possibility. Battling the internal storm, Sarah knew she needed to confront George. The next day was crucial. They had a meeting scheduled to finalize plans. What would she say? How much honesty could she afford to reveal without jeopardizing everything she had worked towards? In her mind, every option played out like a scene from a movie, a meditation on what it meant to be courageous. As she took a deep breath, a fierce determination ignited within her. This was no longer just about her. It was about reclaiming her life and showing Jake and Emily that uncertainty could lead to triumph. With her heart steady and resolve solidifying, she could see the glimmer of potential shining through the darkness. Tomorrow would demand honesty for herself, for George, and for the children who looked to her as their foundation. As Sarah gazed into the receding tide, she could almost taste the salty freedom of possibility. The moment of truth loomed, poised to test her values, ambitions, and limits like never before. Would she confront George armed with the knowledge of his past? Or would she allow fear to dictate her decisions once again? Tomorrow she would face the reckoning. Morning light filtered through the clouds, casting a hopeful glow over the shore as Sarah stood resolutely, the salt-laden breeze tugging at her hair. Today was a reckoning, an opportunity to reclaim her narrative from the confines of doubt that had ensnared her for so long. She felt the coolness of the sand beneath her feet, anchoring her as she shifted her focus from the past to the potential of the present. The unease that had been her companion morphed into a steely resolve. She had spent too long in the shadows, haunted by fear and indecision. Retreating into herself was no longer an option. This meeting with George would be pivotal, not just for their partnership but for her own emotional liberation. She envisioned that conversation unfolding, each question a step toward reclaiming her strength. It was time to confront what lay beneath the surface, a test of courage rather than merely a confrontation. During the drive to their meeting spot, nervous energy coiling tightly in her gut, Sarah rehearsed the words she would say. Honesty would be her tool, a pure extract meant to cut through the uncertainty. As the familiar landscape flew by, her mind danced between gratitude for the lessons learned and apprehension about what might be uncovered. Could George peel back the layers of his past without unraveling the fragile trust between them? Arriving at the cafe, she settled into a corner booth, her heart pounding like a battle drum. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee enveloped her, grounding her in the moment. She couldn't ignore how pivotal this was not only for her but for Jake and Emily. She inhaled deeply, reminding herself of the strength she needed to project. It wasn't merely about confronting George. It was about embodying the courage she wished to instill in her children. The door swung open, drawing Sarah's gaze to George as he entered. A mixture of confidence and uncertainty etched on his face. Their eyes locked for a split second before she gestured for him to join her. He settled into the seat opposite, a smile flickering across his features, momentarily disarming her. Yet, behind the smile, she sensed something deeper, a vulnerability that resonated with her own. "Thanks for meeting me, Sarah," he began, his voice steady yet laced with anticipation. "I've been thinking about our plans. Can we pause for a moment?" Sarah interrupted, the weight of her emotions swallowing the warmth from the room. "There's something we need to talk about first." George's brow furrowed, and Sarah took a breath that felt like fire in her lungs. She couldn't afford to falter now. I think we both know honesty is crucial moving forward. I need to know everything about your past and what truly led you to propose this partnership. His expression shifted as layers of uncertainty danced across his features. For her part, Sarah felt a rush of adrenaline and fear. Would he be open, or would this spark the kind of conflict that would tip everything she had tried to build? The stakes were escalating beyond her expectations as George's lips parted. Sarah could see he wavered, preparing to share secrets, perhaps his insecurities intertwined with ambitions. She leaned in, ready for his words to wash over her like the tide. Another wave of opportunity that could propel her into broader horizons or deeper quicksand. And that moment, Sarah realized that even in the face of conflict, she was gaining clarity. Whether George's response built or dismantled their vision, it would ultimately affirm her capacity for growth amidst adversity. Yet, a lingering question arose. How many truths were concealed beneath the surface waiting to be unearthed, and would she be ready to face them? The air thickened with anticipation, and Sarah knew the transformation within was only just beginning. As George opened his mouth to speak, she braced herself for a revelation that could change everything. Would this be the moment she had been waiting for? Or were they both about to be swept away in turbulent waters? George hesitated, his gaze momentarily drifting away, as if he were measuring the weight of the truth hidden in his silence. Sarah could feel the tension thicken like the fog rolling in from the ocean, enveloping them in a moment both vulnerable and electrifying. The pressure built within her chest, the steady cadence of her heartbeat urging calm while chaos churned beneath the surface. When he finally spoke, his voice was a fragile thread. "I'm not sure where to begin," he admitted, the candor unspooling the knot of anxiety coiled in Sarah. Every syllable was laden with the gravity of confessions ivory towered by fears and setbacks unvoiced. "My past has more than its fair share of mistakes." Unconsciously, Sarah leaned closer, her features tight with focus. "Mistakes are part of growth, George. I need to know what I'm stepping into," she said, steeling herself for revelations that could either uphold or dismantle the partnership they had been so meticulously building. He swallowed hard, a flicker of uncertainty darting across his features. "I've always been driven by ambition, but it sometimes clouded my judgment. A few years ago, I lost my business because I didn't listen to my instincts, trusted the wrong people." His vulnerability struck a chord within her. She remembered moments of firmly grasping on to idealistic dreams of success, only to watch them crumble as the weight of denial pressed her down into the depths of insecurity. For someone who had almost let fear extinguish the fire of her spirit, George's admission unveiled a transformative truth. Instead of instilling confidence, ambition can blind one to reality. Sometimes our failures carve out the path to what we really need to learn. She responded slowly, a realization kindling within her. "But that doesn't absolve us from accountability. What have you learned from your mistakes? What did you take from that experience?" It was a risky question, yet Sarah could sense a shift, as if the air around them had grown lighter. A resolve blossomed within her, as if her own fears were unwrapping in the light of shared understanding. "I've learned to trust my gut, Sarah. I realize now that success is more than just profit, it's about the people we surround ourselves with and the integrity we uphold in our choices," he admitted, strength weaving through his honesty. "I can respect that. It's not just about us, is it? It's about our team, our vision." Each word was steeped in a new clarity for Sarah. The partnership wasn't merely a business arrangement, but a potential beacon of inspiration for others. The thought invigorated her, a spark kindled by shared truths that might just fan into a flame of collaboration as they delved deeper into George's story. Peeling away layers of uncertainty and self-doubt, Sarah found her voice growing stronger alongside his revelations. There was a raw resilience underlying his words, something she had admired from afar, but had never dared to confront within herself. Listening is a powerful aspect of partnership, he reflected, the shadows of his past beginning to illuminate paths ahead. "I've made my share of mistakes, but I'm not the same person I was then. And I want to ensure this venture is built on honesty both with ourselves and each other." Sarah nodded, the combination of relief and empowerment coursing through her like a surge of adrenaline. She recognized this pivotal moment, the least expected ally in her journey of self-reclamation stood before her, and the potential repercussions rippled through her psyche. His words had set off an internal dialogue, a realization that in this mutual sharing lay the blueprint for a partnership built on authenticity, trust, and a shared understanding of sacrifice. But just as they began to find common ground, a thought interrupted her euphoria. Could her own past fears and shadows still threaten their budding aspirations? As the question danced in her mind, her stomach twisted with possibility. She knew that to fully commit, she would need to confront not just his truths, but her own past as well. What would you do, George, if the partnership starts facing conflicts that challenge those very principles you upheld? The honesty of her question loomed large, a self-test she hadn't expected but knew was necessary. As the barista approached with their orders, the tension suspended in the air, Sarah awaited George's answer, heart racing with the urgency of the moment. Would he be ready to tackle the deeper challenges that laid ahead? Or would the pressure reveal cracks in their agreement before it even solidified? George's gaze sharpened, the weight of her question sinking in as he seemed to analyze not only her words but the very nature of their partnership. The barista placed their drinks on the table, the sound breaking the heavy silence between them, but Sarah barely noticed. Her own thoughts swirled, grappling with the potential outcomes of their venture. Honestly, I think the first step in that situation is the hardest, he began, his voice steady but laced with an underlying tension. That's when we'll see who we really are, when our principles are put to the test. If conflicts arise, I want to confront them head-on instead of letting them fester. Denial leads to more mistakes, and I've learned that the hard way. His conviction resonated within Sarah, opening a door to her own vulnerabilities. The fear of conflict had overshadowed her ability to take decisive action in the past, a trait she was still learning to shed. I understand that, but isn't it easier to avoid confrontation when things get tough? I mean, my instinct is often to back away from conflict instead of leaning into it. Her admission hung in the air, the honesty reinforcing her own resolve even as it exposed her flaws. George considered her, and for a moment it felt as if he could see beyond her surface, peeling back layers knitted tightly around her insecurities. It's easier, sure. But facing it allows us to grow. If we run, we are never going to learn about each other or ourselves, he said. A steely determination laced through his tone. Learning means risking failure again, she countered, crossing her arms instinctively in defense. While she wanted to step into the empowerment that came with facing her fears, the prospect felt daunting. True, he acknowledged, but failure isn't the end. It's a lesson waiting to be learned. What if we redefine how we view conflict? Instead of seeing it as a pitfall, we can consider it an opportunity to clarify our goals. Every confrontation could become a stepping stone, elevating us further. His perspective sparked something within her, a flicker of courage warming the edges of her doubt. The potential she felt slipping away could instead yield something far more meaningful through these encounters. What if we face these challenges together? She proposed, emboldened by the idea. What if we made it a pact to approach conflicts as partners, creating a safe space where transparency is key? George's eyes brightened, the hint of a smile creeping into his features. I like that. It's a powerful commitment. But we need to keep each other accountable, no beating around the bush. Honesty and respect should be at the forefront of every conversation. Sarah felt a surge of clarity, an invigorating epiphany that this endeavor was as much a journey of self-discovery as it was of partnership. She could feel her past boundaries beginning to expand. I've always viewed ambition through a lens tainted by fear, fearing I'd push too hard or seem too bossy. Maybe it's time I approached it differently. If we channel our ambitions into constructive feedback, perhaps we could foster an environment that thrives on growth. Exactly, George replied, his voice increasingly confident. This is about us creating a space where everyone feels safe to express their shortcomings or disagreements without fear of repercussions. That's the kind of partnership I want, and it's refreshing to hear that you're open to this as well. But as the weight of possibility bore down on Sarah, a shadow from her past flared in the recesses of her mind, a nagging voice that warned her to guard her heart. Would she truly be able to yield her fears in this new venture? What if one of us steps out of line? What then? How do we ensure that this remains a safe space, and not a realm of criticism? She asked quietly, the weight of her vulnerability surfacing again. The questions hung between them, heavy yet critical, like the brewing storm on the horizon. Then we hold each other accountable, he said firmly. There's no other way. As the conversation deepened, Sarah felt the present intertwining with the cautionary tales of her past. Each step they took into this partnership illuminated aspects of her identity she had long left dormant, igniting a sense of purpose she had thought lost. Yet even amid this newfound excitement, the unsettling thought lingered: could she truly embrace the strength required to confront what lay ahead? And as their dialogue evolved, so did her awareness of the impending confrontation awaiting her. Then we commit to creating an atmosphere built on growth and accountability, she affirmed, a newfound determination thrumming through her veins. As they both took a sip of their drinks, Sarah couldn't shake the pressing question that rose within: would she find the courage to reveal her own vulnerabilities? Would she be ready to confront not just George's past mistakes, but her own tangled history as they ventured deeper into uncharted territory? The next conversation was looming, the stakes growing higher with each word. What shadows from her past would emerge, and would she be ready to embrace them? The sun streamed through the cafe window, casting a warm glow over the table where Sarah and George sat. But the golden light couldn't entirely dispel the chill of uncertainty creeping into Sarah's mind. The conversation had awakened something within her: a fearsome determination, yes, but also a nagging dread about what she might discover about herself in the process. What if we dive into these discussions soon? The sooner we face potential conflicts, the faster we can identify our own triggers and work on them. George's suggestion seemed practical on the surface, yet Sarah felt her stomach tighten at the thought. What if her triggers revealed scars she had long buried? Right, she said slowly, carefully weighing her words. But what happens if I stumble? What if I say something I regret? The vulnerability she had started to embrace now seemed like a double-edged sword. Then we learn together, he replied, and the steadiness of his voice anchored her. Mistakes are essential. They can be our compass pointing the way toward growth. It might feel uncomfortable at first, but discomfort can be invaluable. She nodded, unable to hide the flicker of frustration that sparked within her. Comfort had always been her shield, her go-to when facing the tumult of both personal and professional challenges. Yet here she was, voluntarily stepping into discomfort with George as her ally. Their earlier pact had ignited a different kind of flame within her, a desire to transform. Sarah had always admired ambition, but her mind echoed her doubts about ever being worthy of it. The specter of her past loomed larger with every passing moment, challenging her to confront shades of herself she had meticulously hidden away. The idea of discussing her competencies felt exhilarating but petrifying. Was she prepared to take stock of both her strengths and weaknesses, openly presenting them to someone else? Let us say I can engage with the difficult conversations, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. How do I voice my opinions without tipping over into confrontation or sounding pushy? Ownership is key, George offered. Speak from your own experience, sharing the I statements like I feel or I noticed instead of placing blame. It helps to express your views while minimizing defensiveness. The advice resonated with her, already sparking visions of how to reshape her conversations in this partnership. Sarah realized that here was a chance for reflection, not just about conflicts with George, but about her demeanor with everyone. Could she switch gears from conflict avoidance to open confrontation based on clarity and ownership? Practicing that could make a real difference in my life, she mused aloud, the gears in her mind beginning to turn. It's a muscle, Sarah, he encouraged, enthusiasm glimmering in his tone. The more you practice, the stronger it will become. In time you'll find clarity in how you communicate, not only with me, but in every aspect of your professional and personal life. As they sat in a moment of shared silence, where the world outside briefly forgot them, a sense of adventure stirred within her chest. Perhaps she was more capable than she had ever allowed herself to believe. But beneath the budding confidence lay an undercurrent of fear that refused to yield. What if she stumbled? Or worse, what if she discovered aspects of her character that felt too contradictory to the person she aspired to be? George, what if revealing ourselves hinders our partnership instead of helping it? What if my vulnerabilities weaken us? There it was, the pressing worry she had been skirting around. He regarded her with unwavering focus. Then we rebuild together. Vulnerability isn't weakness, it builds trust. That trust will empower us to push boundaries, challenge assumptions, and support one another through every revelation. His conviction found a home in her thoughts, and while the prospect of diving deep was daunting, she couldn't help but fuel the spark he had ignited within her. If not now, when? With shaking hands wrapped around her mug, a resolve. solidified. "I'm ready to explore," she declared. The time had come to walk the line between fear and freedom, to reveal her true ambitions undistorted by past failures. Yet as she ventured to take this first step into a new realm of self-discovery, a chilling thought crossed her mind. What hidden truths would she uncover, not just about herself but also about the partnership they were constructing together? The conversation was only the beginning, but the moment of reckoning awaited. What if the most significant challenge emerged from the depths of her own identity? As the cafe buzzed around them, Sarah felt the weight of decision pressing heavily on her chest. She took a deep breath, steering herself away from the possible pitfalls of fear that had shadowed her for too long. What lay ahead was murky, yet there was a flicker of excitement dancing in her gut, as if her aspirations were searching for an opening to break free. She looked across the table at George, who sat with a calm demeanor, exuding the assurance she so often craved. "Let us set a time," she suggested suddenly, her own voice surprising her. "When we can really talk about these things." The boldness of her own request stirred something within her, a whisper of strength she had only begun to uncover. "Good idea," George replied, a deliberate smile spreading across his face. "Why not dive in this weekend? We should both outline what's on our minds." The simplicity of this approach soothed her. She could prepare, gather her thoughts, and confront her fears in an organized fashion. "Okay," she agreed. But the anxiety bubbling under the surface fought against her calm resolve. What if I stumble at first? What if I can't articulate what I'm feeling? The thought of inadequacy was a familiar adversary, one she had battled many times before. "Then we find our footing together. It's a process," he emphasized. "Each stumble helps us refine our communication. We're forming a practice ground here. No stakes beyond our willingness to learn." His words acted as tonic, but the echo of her doubts still lingered. The idea of transparent dialogue meant poking at tender spots within herself, places she had traversed with tactful avoidance. Sarah had spent years attempting to define herself by her achievements, all the while evading the emotional facets of her identity that she now had to confront. What if those facets brought her more shame than pride? In the back of her mind, a voice questioned whether she could navigate this unfamiliar terrain of honesty without losing herself. Could vulnerability maintain her sense of ambition, or would it unravel the very fabric of her professionalism? As the days rolled by leading to the weekend, Sarah found herself in a state of hyper-awareness. She began categorizing her thoughts, jotting down the fears that had long held her hostage and the ambitions aching to surface. Each night, she spent a moment with her journal, the blank pages absorbing her fears, her desires, her questions. "Am I ready for this?" she penned one evening. "Who am I to speak of conflict and assertive communication?" By the time Saturday dawned, she knew she would need to present a version of herself to George that fused authenticity with ambition, lest they stray into mere superficiality. When the moment finally arrived, Sarah and George found themselves seated at the very table where they had turned the first page of their partnership. The cafe bustled with energy around them, yet Sarah was lost in the anticipation of discovery. She took a moment to observe George. His relaxed posture suggested he was ready to engage while his eyes mirrored sincerity. "Okay, can we get started?" she asked, and then hesitated, her heart racing. "I've been reflecting a lot this week. Let us hear it," he encouraged, leaning forward. "I think I've been playing it safe for far too long," she said, feeling a rush of clarity, the morning light catching her resolve. "I mean, not just in our partnership but in my career. I avoid difficult conversations because I fear I might be seen as incompetent." The admission fell from her lips before she could rein it in. The act of speaking it solidified its truth in her heart, a magnified reality of the internal battles she fought daily. There was a brief silence as George processed her words, the gravity of her admission enveloping them both. But within that silence, something shifted in Sarah. She could feel the fear inside her begin to crack. It wasn't just about the floundering desire to avoid conflict. It was about growth, an invitation to reshape her identity. "Vulnerability as a liability," George said softly, cautiously treading into deeper waters. "It's a strength. It only exposes your humanity, and humanity connects us." But would he still see her ambition as valuable, or would he now perceive her as a jumble of fears when the light revealed her entirety? The thought loomed dangerously close to her heart as they began to engage in their conversation. Questions she had long suppressed surfaced with urgency. Would this journey together reveal their partnership as a true collaboration, or expose cracks deeper within herself, fractures she'd kept hidden? Sarah's mind raced with the possibilities ahead, the fear of discovery now mingling with hope. What hidden truths might they uncover? Not just about their partnership but about their individual paths. As Sarah shared her fears and aspirations, she felt a flicker of something new, a blend of hope and determination igniting within her. The cafe buzzed on around them, a stark contrast to the shifting dynamics of her internal landscape. George's gaze was steady, his patience palpable, allowing her to probe deeper into her soul's intricacies. I think I've attached my worth to how people perceive me professionally, she continued, a hint of vulnerability lacing her words. It's like I've built this wall to guard my competence, but in doing so I've lost touch with what truly drives me. Am I making sense? George nodded thoughtfully, drawing from his own experiences. Absolutely. That pressure can strangle creativity. Maybe it's time to identify what you value aside from accolades. What energizes you, Sarah? The question hung in the air, urging her to delve into her core. In the past, she'd only sought validation through achievements, yet the thought of re-examining her values excited her. Her mind drifted, contemplating both what she loved and what intimidated her, a collision of passions shimmering just out of reach. It's about connection, she finally said, her voice lifting with conviction. I realize I crave meaningful work that inspires others. But what if I fail? What if I reach out and people reject my ideas? Then you learn from it, George replied, leaning in more earnestly. Every great innovator faced rejection. It's a part of the journey, not a signal to retreat. The willingness to risk vulnerability has the potential to foster collaboration. Consider this. Would you rather forge ahead in safety or take risks that may lead to openings you can't yet envision? His words resonated within her, pushing her concept of success to reshape. Could the fear of rejection be a path toward growth? What if she held the key to unlocking new dimensions of her career through honesty? As their discussion unfolded, Sarah felt a growing sense of empowerment. Identifying her drive meant being brave enough to communicate it, even if that communication came with risks. Could her acknowledgement of vulnerability become the cornerstone of her professional journey? Okay, she said, a smile creeping onto her face. I'm ready to explore ideas that might challenge the norm, to face criticism and use it to mold myself into a better version. As the stakes of their conversation heightened, the cafe faded into the background, making room for the raw energy that began to emanate between them. Yet, beneath her excitement lay a thick undercurrent of fear. What if her newfound confidence was merely a facade? Could she uphold this momentum when faced with actual rejection, or would she crumple under the weight of it? Let's brainstorm those ideas, George suggested, flipping open a notebook. I want to see what sparks for you when you think about the intersection of passion and opportunity. The collaborative effort felt freeing. Her ideas tumbled out, revealing glimpses of her creative vision. Each suggestion built upon the last, illustrating a path forward that, while uncertain, illuminated an avenue brimming with potential. However, with each idea, a niggling voice persisted in warning her of potential failure, reminding her of the need to be guarded. Was she equipped to handle the backlash that might accompany bold creativity? As they sketched out concepts and radical thoughts on the page, realizations permeated her mind. This was more than just a partnership. It was a multifaceted exploration of potentiality. Their ideas were alive, begging for expression, urging her to embrace the unknown. But the looming specter of self-doubt threatened to cast shadows over her enthusiasm. Beneath the excitement, a question lingered: could she genuinely harness this energy, or was she dancing on the precipice of her own fear? As the conversation deepened into the evening, Sarah found herself grappling with the terrifying truth of her potential. A voice in her head clarified. She was teetering on the edge of transformation, but could she step off that ledge into the vast unknown? Let's take this further, she decided, feeling a sense of clarity fortify her resolve. I want to present our ideas next month at the conference. It's time I put my name and vision out there. George's expression brightened, yet a flicker of concern passed through his eyes. That's bold, Sarah. Are you certain you want to go public with this now? The question interlaced with her excitement, a tether that pulled her back to reality. How would she manage the emotional storm that could ensue from sharing her vision? In that moment, she recognized that the foundation of empowerment she began to build was precarious. teetering under the weight of both her aspirations and her fears. Yet, the prospect of daring to transcend was also thrilling, a call to adventure that begged to be answered. Yes, she affirmed with renewed certainty, the distance between her ambition and her limitations narrowing as they finally initiated the next steps. Sarah realized this journey was only just beginning. And yet, it beckoned her to consider. Was she truly ready to face not only potential triumph, but also the darkness of rejection that often walked hand in hand with ambition? The days that followed were a whirlwind of preparation and self-reflection for Sarah. The initial excitement of committing to the upcoming presentation at the conference transformed into myriad emotions swirling around her. Each thought seemed a wave, cresting with hope but crashing back down with doubt. As she immersed herself in developing her ideas, she questioned if she was truly prepared for the vulnerability that would come with public scrutiny. Sitting at her desk late one night, she stared at the blank document on her computer, the cursor blinking defiantly at her. The outline she had sketched in her mind began to unravel in the face of her looming fear of rejection. Replaying George's words in her head, she tried to summon that spark of bravery, but she felt the familiar grip of insecurity tighten around her. "It's going to be fine," she muttered to herself, attempting to banish the noise of doubt. Yet each attempt to conjure inspiration felt more like a battle than a creative process. Determined to break this cycle, she reached for her notebook where ideas had flowed so freely during her conversations with George. Flipping through the pages, she found traces of her passion interspersed with heavy apprehension. The more she read, the more fragmented her thoughts became, until clarity struck amidst the chaos. The key to her challenge was honesty, both in her message and in her approach. With renewed vigor, Sarah crafted each segment of her presentation with the intent to connect, not to impress. She centered her narrative around the themes that had emerged from her discussions with George. This meant sharing not only her innovative ideas, but also her personal journey through fear and the pursuit of meaningful work. As she pieced her thoughts together, she began to feel the familiar pulse of hope stirring within her once more. Incorporating her vulnerabilities into her narrative gave weight to her ideas. The act of embracing her true self was as liberating as it was terrifying. This was not merely a presentation, it was an invitation for dialogue, a chance to explore the intersections of collective experience. However, even as her presentation began to take shape, the specter of her anxiety lurked persistently in the background, often resurfacing at the most inopportune moments. What if they don't connect with my story? What if it falls flat? The questions echoed disdainfully in her mind as she tried to maintain focus. To combat this, Sarah decided to practice her speech in front of trusted colleagues. Enlisting their feedback felt bold, a step she had rarely taken before. Each time she rehearsed, she could feel remnants of her apprehension dissipating. She wasn't just reciting words but sharing pieces of herself. Their supportive reactions bolstered her confidence, yet she still felt the palpable weight of what loomed ahead. The days turned into a countdown, each tick of the clock amplifying her anxiety. The closer she got to the conference, the more she caught herself questioning her every move. Maybe I should tone down my message, she pondered one evening, fear creeping back in. But each time she considered retreating into a safe narrative, she battled back the urge echoing George's words, refusing to allow self-doubt to cage her potential. Finally, with the conference day approaching, she sensed a shift. The simplistic notion of success began to expand in her mind. Rather than viewing the presentation as a final verdict on her abilities, she started to see it as a stepping stone, a learning experience, no matter the outcome. This realization brought a new depth to her journey, enticing her to embrace whatever unfolded. In that transformative moment, as she prepared for her final rehearsal, Sarah smiled, realizing that true empowerment lay not in the applause of others but in her capacity to express her ideas authentically while being unguarded. Yet as she wrapped up her preparation, the looming day remained an enigma, beckoning answers about who she might become as she walked onto that stage. With all her preparations in place, she paused, a singular thought echoing through her mind. The time had come to face herself. Could she really bridge the gap between fear and transformation? Or was she merely a player in an unfolding script of overwhelming ambition? As Sarah stepped onto the stage, a hush enveloped the audience, amplifying her heartbeat that pounded in her chest like a drum heralding victory. Flanked by bright lights and curious gazes, she felt a mixture of adrenaline and empowerment coursing through her veins. This was her moment of truth, a culmination of her journey from obscurity to self-actualization. Gone were the tangles of uncertainty that once clouded her vision. Months of collaboration with George, the honest dialogues, and the risk of exploring her past sins had ironed out her doubts. Today was as much about her ideas as it was about her reclaiming her narrative, stepping out from the shadows of fear and embracing the light of truth. She took a breath, steadying herself and centering her thoughts. What began as a flutter of nerves transformed into focus and determination. Instead of forcing polished perfection, she decided to present a narrative infused with authenticity, crafted carefully from the very essence of her recent learnings. Hello everyone, she began, her voice resonant and clear. Today, I'm here to talk not just about the innovative concepts I've been brainstorming, but about how the journey of rediscovering my ambition intertwined with vulnerability has shaped these ideas. Her storytelling unfolded, revealing her fears of failure amidst aspirations for greatness. As she shared her personal journey, the vulnerability that had once felt like a liability transformed into a tremendous asset. She committed to honesty, allowing the audience to connect with her in ways that extended far beyond mere transactional exchanges. In my past, I was afraid to show my true self, she admitted, eyes scanning the room to capture the engagement ignited within the crowd. But embracing our flaws and fears can amplify our creativity and foster deeper connections. After all, we are not just numbers and outcomes. We are dreams and aspirations waiting to be expressed. With each word, Sarah felt the audience drawing closer. She transitioned into discussing the innovations that had spurred from her collaboration with George, the intertwining of ambition and resilience that vitalized her creative process. What does it mean to be ambitious? She asked, the question echoing through the room, inviting contemplation. It's not just about towering achievements. It's about shaping a work ethic rooted in honesty and accountability, driving a culture where our failures don't define us, but rather, inform our journey toward growth. As she concluded her presentation, the rush of satisfaction washed over her. The journey she had taken wasn't solely about professional success. It had become a vehicle for personal transformation. Every moment filled with doubt, revelation, and the connections she forged with George and within herself had led her here, standing confidently in front of an audience ready to embrace her message. She could almost hear the applause before it rolled in, a wave covering her as the audience erupted in appreciation. In that moment of validation, Sarah felt the solidifying acknowledgement of her journey. She had conquered not just the fear of judgment, but had illuminated her path through authenticity. As the applause rang, her confidence consolidated into something palpable, something she recognized as a lifeline. This was her newfound integrity, a reflection of her established competence. The conference buzzed with energy, but Sarah no longer felt like a ghost visiting from the past. She positioned herself firmly in a realm of creativity, brimming with the understanding that risk was essential for meaningful work. Gratified, she turned her gaze towards the future, realizing how every fear had morphed into a stepping stone for evolution. Later, as she mingled with enthusiastic discussions amongst peers, Sarah embraced the fulfillment of her achievements not just publicly but within. The recognition she craved from the industry came, reestablishing her standing as an event planner who carried the fortitude to transform challenges into opportunities and reflect growth. Through vulnerability, it dawned on her this journey had shaped her into a leader who didn't just dream of achievements, but inspired others through the power of authenticity. No longer haunted by the specter of her past, Sarah Collins embraced her future with a solid confidence that buoyed her spirit. The reverberations of her choices echoed far beyond that stage, and with each conversation, she spread her narrative of resilience and ambition, empowering others to take on their fears and join her in a landscape where vulnerability met vision. And as the evening progressed, Sarah smiled to think she had effectively proven to herself and to the world that embracing truth opens up a world defined not by past transgressions, but by freedom, by transformation. Now, as you reflect on Sarah's remarkable journey, it's your time to take action. You need to subscribe now to witness powerful stories that inspire personal growth. Leave a like now to support the channel and keep these transformative narratives going strong. Share instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see the potent lessons of reclamation and reinvention. Don't wait even one more second. Join us as we continue to explore the extraordinary within the ordinary.